The CEO of Philippine giant Globe Telecom has urged the government to speed up plans to provide every Filipino with access to telecommunications and the internet. Carl Raymond Cruz spoke to CNA's Bernal on the challenges the country has in overcoming the digital divide across the vast archipelago.
So there are probably two challenges that I will mention. The first is, of course, low penetration of fiber broadband all over the country. Second would be the continued high density per site that we have compared to other countries in Asia even. So if you take a look at, for example, Thailand, average number of users per site would probably be 1,500. In the Philippines, that would be close to 4,600, 4,700. So the ability of the industry to actually deploy new sites all over the country. Of course, it being an archipelago with 3 main islands, if you count total more than 7,000, that in itself presents a certain level of challenge. So that's one. The second one is on the penetration of broadband. I think the national government should really hasten the execution and deployment of the national broadband development plan. And we can contribute as we continue to do so via our capital expenditure. But of course, in far-flung areas, it's quite difficult to actually put up sites and develop or draw fiber because of certain challenges that I mentioned.
What is the incentive then for the private sector to go into these far-flung areas to set up these sites?
The incentive is basically a license to operate, because if you put up sites in those far-flung areas, then the communities in those areas will benefit from the connectivity that we provide. They'll now be able to use our platforms, Globe One. They'll now be able to use platforms such as GCash. We should be able to enable education, even livelihood in those areas.
There was a lot of debate when the third telco player in the Philippines entered the market. And as an opinion leader, what do you think should the government ensure as part of due diligence in accepting new players into the market?
First and foremost will be the ability of the player to actually ensure continued investments in the network. For those of you who are quite familiar with telco, it's no joke to actually get into the business with very limited capital. So the need for capital expenditure year on year is going to be quite massive. So the government needs to ensure that the new player will have the capacity to continuously invest in network expansion and coverage to provide service to its customers. Second, obviously a lot of transparency in terms of where they will go, how they will get there, so that because if they will go to an area which is currently being served, then we're not extending the coverage of the industry. So hopefully they will also prioritize what we would call GIDA, geographically isolated, disadvantaged areas, so that a greater number of Filipinos will benefit from that basic connectivity. So the government needs to ensure that there are certain measures and KPIs linked to that as well.